Welcome to the Bold Analysis. For the second week in a row, the Star newspaper has been giving free copies of their papers to the public. But one striking thing about that project, that activity, is that they have splashed two screaming headlines on political stories. And most pundits are actually arguing that the plan, which is supposed to give government visibility through making sure that people have access to the information in terms of what's happening, could actually be a propaganda scheme. And I want us to look at this headline. This was the headline last Tuesday on 9th January. And that story was about how William Ruto is preferring Raila Odinga to be the chair of the African Union next year instead of Uhuru Kenyatta. That story, it's only the Star which had it, and no any other media outlet had that story. Today, they're running another screaming headline story about how Ichun'gwa is planning to take a bill in parliament for the creation of state capture inquiry, and allegedly that hot air inquiry, commission of inquiry, is aiming at squeezing former President Uhuru Kenyatta, CS Matian'gi, the ex or a current military boss, Francis Ogola, in connection to the ills that happened in the last regime. And I want to tell you something. I want to analyze this to the whole scheme on two fronts, or rather on twofold. Number one, I want to explain for you what exactly is the project to distribute these free copies. Now, last year, the Star won a tender to be the company, the parent company, that will be distributing a government pullout known as MyGov. If you look at MyGov, it is a pullout that allegedly carries all tenders and projects and programs that are run with the different ministry, nearly all the ministries in government. And despite the fact that, of course, government doesn't have an investment in the print media, they contacted, the Star won that tender. And the reason, for some time, that pullout was just being sold as part of the newspaper, distribution. As much as they're doing their distribution, they put that pullout inside the Star. Now, in 2024, January, they started a new plan that every Tuesday they will be giving free newspapers. So for people, if you're in a matatu, you go to a police station, the strategy is to distribute in matatus, police station, government offices, nearly all those public spaces where Kenyans are. And it is supposed, allegedly, for the public to know the tenders and everything that is going on there. Now, there is something that I want to, some red flags on that scheme. Two things. The newspaper, other companies, the newspaper sales on Tuesday are impacted by this move, especially the other mainstream newspapers. Remember, there are only two mainstream newspapers. That is the Star, that is the Standard, and the Nation. And the Star comes distance third as just another blog. I think for me, I do. There's no difference between me and the Star. We do the same thing. So it has impacted on the distribution of the other newspapers every Tuesday. Number two, this story is to sell out the government, to ensure that the government pullout, which is actually distributed for free, gets to the public. But let's ask, we are distributing 100,000 pieces of the Star for free on Tuesday in major towns, in government offices, hospitals, police stations, and all those areas. So I want just to look at it. When someone, majority of people who are buying newspapers to read newspapers, are they buying newspapers to look for government tenders? Or they're buying newspapers just to read to get informed? Between when someone sees that headline, reads that headline, how many people are eligible for tenders? Government tenders. There is a clique of fellows that are tenderpreneurs. That for them, they don't even read that magazine. In fact, tenders are almost, they are all in the electronic infrastructure that the government has already rolled out, probably even in e-citizen. So what is packaged as a project to ensure that Kenyans know what the government is doing, to me, is just a proxy, but they just want to use that project, the Star newspaper, to run political stories and to ensure that the distribution gets made. Because for the 2 days, they've been running exclusive stories. Now, let's get back to the bill. And even as we do that, remember, as we give free copies, government has pending bills, a lot of debts from the mainstream media that are even yet to be paid. And we don't want to look at that now. Back to the bill. Ichun'gwa is crafting a private bill that is supposed to create the State Capture Commission of Inquiry. The last time William Ruto was asked about the state capture, this was his response.
When you come in the space where we came in, you know, the events of August 15th, were horrible, you know, because even the military, a sacred institution, had been roped into the scheme to sabotage the will of the people of Kenya because of that state capture menace, right? If Chebukati were to tell you the kind of hell he went through, yeah? If the day the story of August 15th will be told in Kenya, yeah? You will know why I am delaying, yeah? Because now I have to balance between, do I sort out the economy? You know, we are almost in the red, you know? Or do I swing this big thing that will drain our energy? I want to promise you that that story will be told one day. This state capture will be done one day. But we'll establish the commission one day. But where we are as a country, I have to balance. You know, if you were to sit where I'm sitting, James, yeah, you would know why I have to go slow on certain things to allow the country to get out of the mess we are in, you know, without overloading it with so many, you know, so many other issues. Our plate is full, you know, so I have to kind of balance, you know, but I want to promise you that that story will be told.
And you will know very well that is not been. He said he didn't want to go into that. Allegedly, according to what that editor is saying, Uhuru Kenyatta, CS Matian'gi, and the military boss, exclusively, especially the military boss, is targeted for questioning about the 2022 presidential election fiasco in Bomas of Kenya. Now, I want to say for the record here, this story is just trivial. Even that bill is just trivial. I'm one person that I don't believe that the issue, what is called a state capture, is just another hardcore word to sugarcoat corruption. And even the writer is talking about what the state capture is going to look at: corruption during Uhuru era, tax exemptions, election fiasco, and all those. Now, we already have institutions. Do you think we cannot talk about, we cannot handle, we cannot try these things because we lack an institution to do it. We have the courts, we have the DPP, we have the DCI, we have the investigation, all the investigation agencies. If someone feels that someone has a wind of corruption during Uhuru era and it has to be tried, then we already have the channels. Take that court, petition DPP, take that petition to DPP, let them investigate, let that file be processed. Then that specific person is checked in court. If it is about Bomas of Kenya, the DCI and the DPP is all there. Charge whoever is the complainant. Go and complain. Bring your evidence. Go to court. Let it be tried. But how, and one thing I don't understand, where I'm telling you the commission stories are just fiasco, are just trivial stories, is because, so after commission of inquiry is formed, what next? Wakishamaliza hiyo, they write a recommendation to the president for someone to be removed, or what exactly? Uhuru is not even going to vie again. Uhuru is enjoying his retirement. So what will be the impact? So you can see that there's nothing like commission of inquiry. And in fact, what they are calling commission of inquiry on Uhuru era, then let's start from 2013. It's good. Where is Eurobond? The explanation has never been done. How about NHI? How about NSSF? How about NHIF? How about, let's look at all this. Let's look at the question of land. Because the commission of inquiry, if what is the scope of work? Is it formed just to investigate Uhuru-Matian'gi, who and who? So that tells you clearly that even the people that are coming up with this story, it is just trying to create some commotions. I am realizing something very identical in the two headlines, last week and this week. They are all political stories. They're all talking about Uhuru era politics. And that is what I want to look into in this podcast. The intention of those 100,000 free copies, I see, it is not to make people understand what government is doing. It is supposed to serve a purpose. It is supposed to run some stories in the political mass and drive an agenda. Remember in 2024, I told you guys, and I've been saying, William Ruto has started campaigning for 2027, and that is what he is busy doing. So every political machinery, every scheme, everything you see, you must lens it, you must pass it through the 2027 political lens. So he's actually unpopular. That's one thing that even the intelligence team was saying is unpopular. I was reading today that people say there is actually a state house handler who is saying that president makes calls to county commissioners and some grassroots leaders as early as 4 a.m. in the morning, and also another security meeting convened in the wee hours of the morning with the police boss, the intelligence, and Kindiki, so that he kept abreast. And that writer was saying, the reason why they were saying is that to tell the public that William Ruto understands the suffering of the Kenyan people. That is why that writer was actually telling us that story. And I believe that there is something intended. And before we look at, before I break it down to you, why the political, where the 2022 political narrative is being floated in public now, I also want to read your feedback. What is your take on this commission of inquiry story, or rather that probability? Remember, we don't even have IBC. We still don't even have IBC. It was at one point on the bipartisan talk. So what exactly is it? It's coming at a time, some almost 15 months later, after Ruto came to presidency, and after taking the first few months complaining, they had to retreat. Now they're back into it. I want to tell you, number one, I see this as a secret scheme to water down the cost of living question that is dominating the public spaces. And you can see the target of that story, of that project, is to ensure that every Tuesday, the Star newspaper is read everywhere. Now, if you read those headline stories, they're telling Kenyans to think about Uhuru. Last week, we were told about Uhuru Raila. Today, it is Uhuru-Matian'gi, Millitary. Now, what is the discussion today? What will be the agenda? The agenda, and everyone in these matatus, in this police station, in the hospitals, will be talking about that. And there is an attempt to create an impression and rather, to divert the attention of the country on that issue of the cost of living, because that is one thing that no one seemed to have a solution. I can tell you for sure. No one seemed to have a solution. Now, someone will sit back and start thinking that, it is Uhuru era. The cost of living is because of Uhuru this, Uhuru that. There is some time on Sunday, President shared this graphic. This graphic was about taxation regime during Uhuru time and Kibaki time. And then, if you look at that, the taxation dropped in 2020. And what William Ruto did not tell the public is that is the time there was COVID-19. So when there was COVID-19, the economy went into a total shutdown. There was that lockdown. People could not move. People were locked up in their houses. And government also had to do some tax reliefs on the people to just help save the situation. That's what the public was not told. And now, they know very well that Kenyans are asking the cost of living question. By the way, we need to acknowledge that the price of fuel dropped by 5 shillings. But I don't know why Kenya Kwanza is asking us to praise them for it, because when the president was in Kisii, he told us that he's not in charge of the prices and the prices are falling themselves. And of course, the global prices have reduced. As to whether the change in pump prices reflecting the global changes is what we may need to question. Number 2, these stories, someone want to legitimize Uhuru blames. And I can tell you, commission of inquiry, they can even form it, but it will not be formed with a strong legal ground. It will be formed as a political propaganda machinery, so that they start summoning people left, right, and center. Probably it will be formed within the precincts of parliament. They start summoning people left, right, and center, asking questions. What did you do right? What did you do wrong? So that the media will carry that story. And they will be using it as a strategy to unearth, or rather to bring in stories about what happened at Bomas of Kenya, about I don't know what happened where, about corruption. So they want to bring all that. And that's why I'm insisting. If you know someone is corrupt and you have some case against the corrupt person, do you need a commission of inquiry when we have the DPP, we have the DCM, we have the court? Don't you see that even the whole commission of inquiry is a waste of taxpayers' money? Number 1, it's also a waste of people's time. We have more serious things that are progressive that we can do. Number 3, I think the commission inquiry is a scare, it's a scarecrow being erected to suppress Uhuru era politicians that are regrouping around Uhuru Kenyatta ahead of 2027. What is it? In this issue of 2027, we saw yesterday Uhuru was just relaxing somewhere. He was not taking a rest. Playing golf with Mama Margaret Kenyatta, and there have been a lot in 2024. One of the William Ruto's biggest scare is that Uhuru era politicians are regrouping, and they could be regrouping to kick out William Ruto. So this story of a commission of inquiry is just telling them, you guys, I will deal with you. I will come and start asking questions. They want the likes of, there are politicians like Matian'gi who could also be having political ambitions. These are the things that are being thrown their way to suppress such moves, to suppress those politicians. Number three, and I wish as me will not buy into this. I think the intelligence team are also trying to set a political agenda for the opposition amid the protests. Raila announced pushback protests that will then happen later in this year to protest against Ruto policies. And Raila announced those pushback activities. Someone is now creating, and the messaging in public is very hardcore and something that Ruto do not really like. Someone is announcing some proxy war against this so that will pull Raila Odinga out of it. Lastly, I think government is defeated in this whole judiciary fiasco, the fight on judiciary. They're a bit defeated. They're just looking for an escape route. They want to create this, they want to create that, to create that other story, because that is what it is. I don't know, and I want to say here, we are the newspaper as a media, the print media is the traditional media that carries the trust. People by then, we still buy newspapers. Now, the population that buys the newspaper, that are reading this newspaper, are targeted, are actually the middle class. The middle class are revolting against the policies. And I see these free star copies as an intervention to try to reach out to the middle class. And especially, I want to believe public servants. They are the ones that are highly targeted. You've had them being taken to police station, being taken to hospitals, being taken to government offices. Then they're also targeting a bit of border. Those border guys only read the headline. They're not going to read the content of the story. I mean, that for sure we know very well. They not read it. Now, if someone wants to try to tone down the public to ensure that reduce hostility on William Ruto, I don't think the newspaper is what is going to help. What you just need to do the right thing. If the question of the cost of living, you just need to handle it. Now, we must also tread very careful that I want you to imagine if this tender was given to if this tender was given to Nation, a Nation rivals Standard, so that every Tuesday, Nation is giving some free copies, 100,000 free copies. So, if Nation gives 100,000 free copies every Tuesday, will people buy Standard? So even in the spirit of competition, I think the competition authority must also do some very good explanation. What exactly is the rationale in the business space? Do someone want to phase out the other newspapers? Surely. Is also the intention to sabotage them? Because if you give free, you can still give the government copies for free. Yes, you can still print and give them for free. Even the people daily used to give free copies, by the way. But despite of that, it has never gotten to the mainstream space. So I am not against giving free copies. But what's so difficult with government publishing, even the Star publishing, and as they sell the other Star newspaper on this end, mtu akinunua the Star anapewa the other one. So that we also don't affect business. Remember, this print media space is also employing Kenyans, and we could be maybe staring at a scheme that will make people lose jobs. That's my take. Let's meet in the next. Asante.